One of the important things that I suggest companies when they are looking for office spaces is to compare their company's collab to work ratio with the space's collab to work ratio. And if these are matching, then that workspace matches their requirement. That's one of the factors to match the requirement and the space that a company is looking for. And what is this collab to work ratio? It's a very simple mathematics where you look at your company's or your team's performance and look at how many hours in a day do they on an average spend in face-to-face meetings or group meetings, right? So how many hours they spend versus how many hours the total hours of the day. So if let's say a team is, and this varies, right, and depending on the company, depending on the type of the company, depending on the stage of the company and their growth, this can be anywhere vary from 10% to even as high as 40%. And in fact, if I have to show you that, we have analyzed this from various companies. This is the collab to work ratio of some of the companies that we have kind of worked with, right? So if it's startups, then they're probably spending about 20 to 30% of their time in just collaboration, right? And if it's larger companies, then they're spending more because probably there are many departments, many units have to come together to get a project off the ground. So the number of hours spent in collaboration actually increases with sometimes in larger companies. Then obviously startups, early stage startups are actually spending more versus growth stage startups might be spending little. They might have plateaued out in terms of 25% or 20% of their time. So this is the collab to work ratio of a company. Now, how do we find out the collab to work ratio of the space that you are planning to rent out? So let's look at that as an example. So um, here is the layout of one of the co-working spaces that we've taken up. And obviously, we don't want to reveal the names, but if you see here, the blue ones, the light blue and dark blue are the workstation areas. The yellow areas and the green ones are the collaboration areas. They are either lounge areas, community spaces, or meeting rooms, big boardrooms, and so on and so forth. Right now, to simplify this, I've color coded it. Right, so all the red areas are work areas, and all the yellow areas are the collaboration areas. So for this particular layout, which is the option one that I'm going to compare, I just we just did this and then ran it past our friend ChatGPT here and asked ChatGPT, hey, give me a ratio, right? So it kind of neatly identified the red areas versus the yellow areas. Red again being the work areas and yellow being the collaboration areas, and it said that this space's red to yellow or yellow to total ratio is about 35%. So if your company has a collab to work ratio of 30% to 35%, which means that you're heavily into face-to-face collaboration, this space is an ideal space because you've got enough collaboration zones for your teams to collaborate. And let's take it to account that collaboration in companies is not just about conference rooms and discussion rooms. There's a lot of collaboration that happens over coffee. There's a lot of collaboration that happens over lunch. There's a lot of collaboration that happens over casual seating areas, right? It's not just meeting rooms. We're not only talking about conference rooms with projectors or whiteboards, right? So collaboration is any kind of collaboration, right? Where problems get solved by more than one people sitting together and working. Now, let's take another example, right? This is another layout of, by the way, this was a co-working space. This is a managed office space. So let's look at the collab to work ratio of this managed office space. Again, like I did before, I've color coded the red and the yellows. Yellows being collaboration zones and red being the work zones. So let's look at what ChatGPT had to say for this. So when I asked it to kind of compare this, it said that this space's collab to work ratio is about 22.88 percentage, right? So which means that if your company's collab to work ratio is about 20%, then this kind of an office space is ideal for you, right? You can your teams will find enough areas to collaborate and succeed as a team. Now let's look at another example, right? This is another layout of a managed office space, um, and uh, and again I've color coded it, and you can visually see that the yellow area is uh, very small compared to the red area. But let's ask ChatGPT for the same. ChatGPT says that the collab to work ratio is 10.26 for the space. So which means if you are taking up the space, you have one, if your collaboration to work ratio for your company is about 20%, the space only offers 10% of the space's collaboration area. Either it's a mismatch, or how do you fix it? If this is the space that works for you from a location, budget, so many angles, then how do you fix it? So the only way to fix it is that you build your own conference room inside your workspace, right? Or you build a discussion room inside your workspace, or you create a breakout area within your workspace for people to casually sit and collaborate and so on and so forth. Now, that's obviously a solution, but please do take into account that when your company's collab to work ratio, when you're building these conference rooms inside your office spaces, you're paying for it, right? The whole idea of going to a flex office or a co-working space or a managed office is to maximize the usage of these shared amenities. So there will be very little point for you to take a six-seater conference room and pay for the six seats month on month, even though you're using that space only for 25% or 30% of the time, which means that the remaining 70% of the time that your conference room is not being used, you're still paying rent for it, right? So let's take an example of 10,000 rupees being an average seat cost. So if for a six-seater conference room, 60,000 rupees is the monthly rent. And if you're using it only for 30% of the time, it means that you're roughly spending 35,000 or at least 40,000 rupees more than what you should be spending, because this particular space's common collaboration areas are not sufficient, which means that you're paying for that additionally. And is that a right decision for you to make is something that I would urge you to think. And to round it off, let's look at the last layout. There's another layout of a managed office space. Um, and I've again color coded the red and yellows. You can see that very clearly here. And when I asked ChatGPT about this, ChatGPT nicely said, "Hey, these are the red areas, these are the yellow areas, and the average collab to ratio is about 29.75, right, or 30% roughly, right, which is great." So, and broadly, if you see, co-working spaces will ideally have a higher collab to work ratio. Managed offices would have lesser. In fact, there are managed office operators where they don't do any common conference rooms, which means that the collab to work ratio is 0%, right? And which essentially means that in your private office, you have to accommodate for all collaborative activities that have to happen at the company level. So, which means that your budgets are going to be higher, even though your production workstations may be only 50, maybe 50-member team, you might actually have to build collaboration area of maybe 20 more seats or 25 more seats just to accommodate for that, which means that you're paying rent for those 25 seats that you would not want to otherwise pay. So choose the right space. Uh, Look at the collab to work ratio. It's very simple. Like I did. Just ask for the floor layout of the place where you're taking it up. Just make it easy for an AI tool like ChatGPT by color coding that. I've just drawn rectangles and boxes here, right? Nothing fancy about it. Just drawn rectangles and boxes to just identify the area visually and ask ChatGPT this. The prompt was, what is the ratio of yellow versus the total area, right? And show me the calculation, elaborate and show me. So it kind of neatly did this. It neatly identified the red areas, yellow areas, and here you don't have to worry about what is the dimension of this, right? Whether it is a square feet, square meters, doesn't matter because you're looking at the ratio. So it just did a pixel ratio and then finally said that yellow area versus the total color coded area. So total work plus collab area as the denominator and collab area as the numerator. It said that 35% is the ratio. So for any company that's heavily into collaboration, maybe a startup, this would be an ideal location for them to choose. So that's kind of an important factor I would love you to consider. It's the collab to work ratio. Uh, and how do we identify the collab to work ratio of your company? Simple. Look at, if you're already in an office, look at how your conference rooms are being utilized today, right? So on an average, how many hours it's being utilized today, right? And then that gives you a collaboration need for your business. Otherwise, look at your own calendar. The simplest thumb rule could be just look at your calendar and look at how many meetings, face-to-face meetings, are you getting into with your own team, with your own leaders, and that is a great indication. Or take, to make it a little bit more scientific, take calendar, your Google Calendar or your MS Office calendar for, let's say, 5 to 10 different people across different hierarchies of your company. Average it out. That will give you the collab to work ratio of your business. Match it against the space and see if that's a good fit. Thank you.